Okay,
Sorry.
here we go.
again.
So convening Monday, December 1st, 2025. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll stand.
States for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, and justice for all.
There's no invocation this morning. That will occur tomorrow morning. And then let's go on to the roll call.
Counselor Young,
Here.
Counselor Belcott,
Present.
Counselor Fuentes,
Here.
Counselor Little,
Here.
Chair Marshall.
Here. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
None today.
Thank you. Okay, so this morning, we have a public hearing on the 2025 annual budget, and we'll be hearing from our esteemed elected officials. The public comment for the general public will occur tomorrow because our meeting will continue to tomorrow. But let's start off with District Court. Good morning.
This is David Zimmerman, Accounting Services Manager from District Court. And I'm here to represent District Court and to answer any questions that you may have for any of the amendments.
Okay. Did you have a presentation or just?
I did not have a presentation prepared.
All right. Are there any questions or anything from the budget office? Any questions from anyone? Councillor Belcott? No questions. Okay. We're getting off easy.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Then moving on to Superior Court. Welcome. Good morning.
I'm not going to go over every slide. So if I could have you advance. And again. One more. And one more. One more. And one more. I think we're on page 6. Yes. So we really did try to focus on just what our critical or our mandated services were this year. But we also wanted to give you a snapshot of us compared to other similar counties. So in Clark, you see our filings for 2024 compared to Spokane and Snohomish counties, who are usually our comparables, our population numbers, and then the numbers of judges, commissioners, and total staff. We wanted to highlight this because we do a really excellent job with the number of staff we have and judicial officers and judges that we have. And so this was important for us to share. And I'm going to pause and let Judge Vanderwood join us.
We heard you were busy this morning. Thanks for being here.
Yes, appreciate it. I don't know what Pam has covered already. I'll jump in on just a couple of parts as she was talking about with the staffing levels, just the disparity despite the work and effort that we have going on with Superior Court. If we take a look at the next item, it shows just these case filings, the workload. As you are aware, Superior Court does not control how much work we're responsible for completing. It's based on court filings. This demonstrates, as we talk and you're aware of, the ongoing increase in those numbers across the system, particularly in relation to unlawful detainer cases. The jury trial numbers continue to increase. We're anticipating basically having double the amount of trials this year that we had in 2019, and that is jury trials. It doesn't take into account non-jury trials that we have as well. So we anticipate numbers continuing to increase, so the stress on the system is only going to be more critical moving forward. On the next slide, this is a reminder of our request from the critical needs request, focusing on converting 2 positions that have been long-term project positions to full-time positions. We think the time is now to accomplish that. We understand that there are other project positions throughout the county, of course, but based on the critical needs that we have, these are our top priority to get these moved to full-time positions. We think it's appropriate to do that now. They have been included since 2022. The need is ongoing. It's not going to diminish. It's only going to increase. If we look next then at our request for the budget, we have made sure to limit as much as possible our budget requests. These are included in Ms. Otto's recommendation, and we appreciate that she's supportive of these requests that we've made. Again, these include just minimum request because we understand the budgetary constraints and the issues that are involved. And so that's what we have included in the basic request, plus the additional, like I mentioned, critical needs that focus on those 2 FTEs converging, as well as the added technical position in cooperation with the IT department and how important that is, because right now we're having to do that just as a temporary position, and that is a concern for a variety of reasons. And then finally, this is just kind of an overview from Superior Court, because as you're aware, on the general fund, there are a lot of monetary issues that relate to law and justice in general. But as we focus on what portion of that is Superior Court, it's actually a very small portion. If we take a look at the overall operating budget for Superior Court in the context of the county's operating budget, it's 1.4% of that. If we take a look at how much the Superior Court receives from the general fund allocation, it's 3.2% of the county budget. So this critical needs and critical focus is a relatively small part of the overall budget impact for the county, yet it is very important. Finally, the public safety sales tax, it's a good revenue source. Right now, Superior Court does not receive any funding through the public safety sales tax. So we just want to highlight that as you take a look at difficult decisions that need to be made. And we renew our request that we've made both with the budget itself as well as the critical needs request also. And we're available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? I don't see any. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the treasurer. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Council, County Manager. For the record, Alicia Topper, Clark County Treasurer. And we don't have any formal requests for this morning. You did hear from myself and my Chief Deputy, Sarah Lowe, regarding our web portal project. So I'd like to put a pitch out for that once more this morning. In the request that we originally put forward, it had 3 funding sources, $50,000 of general fund from the Treasurer's Office. It also included $130,000, which would have been reappropriated from some cost savings from a prior IT project that we would like to move forward to the web portal project. And then it included a general fund request. And the budget director, Emily, reached out to us late last week and asked if there was any way we could move the project forward, or the question was, what would happen if you don't get the money? And essentially the project would not happen. So if you had to make the tough decision of not allocating general fund, I would ask that you still consider moving the $50,000 from my budget to IT to help support the project, and also the $130,000 in cost savings from a prior project. That would allow us to keep the project moving in 2026, and then we can come back to you next year during the budget process and give you more formal numbers and options after we conduct our research. The other thing I'd like to speak on this morning, other than just my office, is supporting the multiple requests about project positions. I know that is an ongoing expense to make them permanent, but Superior Court and a few other offices, including the assessors, see those positions as critical And if cuts were to come in the future, they would be able to make those decisions based on their office's needs. They'll give you good reasons about why it's important not to use project positions for ongoing operations, but I just wanted to let you know I also support that. And Greg Kimsey's request, the auditor's request for a grant writer. As you know, I stepped forward this year and wrote a grant on behalf of affordable housing and homeownership. Traditionally not the role of the treasurer to be writing grants to Department of Commerce for those types of projects. And I think the county would more than pay for that position through grants that were awarded from other sources. Anyway, good morning. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and that's all for me unless you have questions.
Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Could you just elaborate a little bit on what you're recommending? So there's some changes from your original request on how you would balance those things out, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, and I'll just say I would like the full request to go forward. That way we have the package for next year, but I understand that you have some very difficult decisions regarding your general fund. So the recommendation would be to amend the recommended budget by the county manager and allow the treasurer to move 50,000 of our general fund, which is our contracts budget, to IT to fund a portion of the project, as well as move the $130,000 that's currently in a fund that was left over from an IT project to the web portal project. So it wouldn't be new money, it would be reallocating existing fund balance.
So that would be 180,000. What is the total project cost?
If you recall, we had a set aside for general fund, but we were going to need to do that initial research to get the exact dollar amount.
Okay, so this would cover that research then.
We believe it would, yes.
Okay, with no additional funds from the general fund, it would be repurposing.
Until we come back to tell you exactly how much.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the fund that would be transferred is Fund 3194.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning, Treasurer Alicia Topper. Really quick question. And I think I heard you mention a moment ago that you do support transitioning the project positions at the Superior Court to permanent positions. Is that what I heard?
I do. And just for philosophical purposes, I believe that if an office comes forward with FTEs and it is an ongoing position that they need to support their operations through statutory requirements or other reasons, it should be permanent. And then if budget cuts come in the future, they have to decide what part of their budget to cut, or if it's FTEs, if it's that position or another. Basically having a full-time position that's needed ongoing, hidden under a project title, has a lot of barriers and a lot of negative consequences. But that, I'm sure, I know the assessor has some testimony on that this morning as well. And you just heard from Superior Court about why it's important for them to have that decision-making authority in regards to their own operations.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's move on to the sheriff. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My request for staffing, I think we resolved about 2 weeks ago, so we won't go into that. I think we would all agree that was a good meeting, and we're going to move forward from that. The request today I sent, I think on October 29th, we had our last meeting. I forwarded the county manager the priority list for those equipment needs. I'm assuming you've got them in an email. So there was basically five safety or investigative requests, and I put them in priority. I wish public safety and law enforcement and all the things that we talk about here didn't keep going up in costs, but they do. But so if you look at them, our number one is basically the forensic examination device. It's called Cellbrite. It gets into cell phones. If you write a search warrant, we have to do investigative work. That's about $79,000 for a one-time cost. If you have that memo in front of you, there's also an ongoing cost of $9,300. But I do believe the sheriff's office, I was talking with some people this morning, that we could cover that ongoing cost yearly in our budget somehow. So the one-time cost would be about $79,000. And as you go down, you'll see the ballistic shields that are very important for safety. Drone as a first responder, we've talked about that. These are all one-time fundings. The hearing protection is so when we're at the range, we can have electronic hearing so you can still hear the instructions, but yet it'll muffle out the sound. And for 70 of them that we have to buy. That's how expensive they are. And then the last one is kind of has to do with also our range and the issues we've talked about at Bonneville. The rifle platform we have, if you don't know what a 223 rifle sounds like, it's a very loud sound, a cracking sound, but we're looking at adding suppressors to that rifle platform. It is expensive, $350,000. I guess it's relative, but that would minimize that sound quite a bit. I know some of you shoot, and it minimizes quite a bit. You can hear the difference. You wouldn't hear the difference if you were a neighbor at Bonneville. You probably wouldn't even hear the suppressor going off with a rifle sound. So that's a real brief overview of what the safety needs are for the sheriff's office. Any questions?
Are there any questions?
Just curious, the suppressors, would they be used anywhere aside from Camp Bonneville?
Well, they would be attached to the rifle. So the rifle is really the main weapon for law enforcement. I know we all carry handgun, but in most situations, the rifles are deployed, used. If they're used, that's obviously a longer range and much more accurate. No, they would be on our patrol rifles altogether. Yes.
Can some of these expenses be included when we're looking, which I think we'll look at more specifically, that 0.1% sales tax in the new year?
It could be. I was going to mention that here. That could be something that could be considered out of that. Obviously, we have to see how much revenue comes in. I know there's other staffing needs from that, but yes, that is a possibility. You could put it on hold to see what that looks like. Or the public sales safety taxes Judge was talking about. There's not that previous one. There's not a lot of money in that one anyways. He didn't allude to that, but I would say I would want to use some of that money, but I believe that's down to 175 maybe thousand balance.
Yeah, it's maxed out right now, so there's no capacity for additional requests for that.
Yeah, but the new one out of 2015, as that comes in mid next year, yeah, that could be looked at for some of these needs as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, prosecuting attorney. Good morning.
Good morning, Council. Morning, Council. Oh, there we go. Apparently, I just needed to speak up. So we are in an interesting place in the criminal justice system right now. I've been at this for a long time, and for a long time, what I've seen is just really very small incremental increases for the different agencies, law enforcement agencies, prosecutors, indigent defense. And that's sort of how our system has sort of moved along for a long time, but it's very different now. We're looking at really significant increases in numbers of law enforcement officers. There's a broad focus in the community on a need for additional law enforcement funding, and we're seeing that occurring. And it's different, it's new, it's significant. We're going to see big increases. We're going to see significant increase in the number of sheriff's deputies, which I support. It's good. There's funding for that. And then we're going to see significant number of increase in BPD officers also. They're also getting funding, and they're going to increase their numbers. Proposition 5 passed, so that'll increase their numbers. And then they're also going to put in for the grant funding, the state grant funding. And I expect they'll get that and get more funding and more officers there also. You see the other small cities also passing sales taxes to increase law enforcement. Those are smaller numbers because those the smaller cities that generate fewer cases. And if they had a couple officers, but they all add up. But these numbers for the sheriff's office and BPD, these are big numbers, and this is a big change. Well, cases come to the prosecutor's office from law enforcement, so it's not going to happen immediately because it'll take time to get those officers on. But we expect there will be more work in the prosecutor's office moving forward. Can't predict how much. We all kind of try to figure out, okay, what's the number of new cases that are going to be generated for the prosecutor's office when you really increase law enforcement. We can't say a specific number, but I think we can all say it's going to increase the workload. And then at the same time, we see a really big, just a huge shift in indigent defense. It hasn't hit yet, but it's going to start hitting next year, the first 10% increase. And I've talked about this, and our indigent defense director has talked about this, but this is another big change. The Supreme Court issued a ruling that over the next 10 years, all counties need to basically triple the number of public defenders. That's another huge change. Now, again, it's over 10 years, and it's the metric has to be 10% per year over that 10 years, and that's why I said, next year is the first year that's hitting. But that's another really big change. So these are big new changes that I've not seen before in my entire time serving as a prosecutor. And I won't be serving as a prosecutor for much longer. You've heard I'm not running again, so you're going to hear me talk to you here, and then again next year. Then you won't hear from me anymore. But I think it's important that you hear my perspective. I've been at this for a long time. These are new things in the justice system, going to have really big impact on your decisions for particularly this indigent defense cost. And it's real, and it's maybe there will be state funding for the indigent defense costs. So far, there doesn't seem to be any, but that Supreme Court rule is it's going to change regardless of kind of how the funding breaks out. Maybe the legislature will step in and take some or all of the burden off of the counties as this big funding increase starts to be realized. But 5 years from now, we're going to have a lot more defense attorneys because we'll have to, because we'll be halfway into that 3 times as many that's required over 10 years. And we know we're going to have a lot more officers. You got to think about the prosecutor's office too. So I lay this out because this is new and big and different. The prosecutor's office has been funded up over the years I've been in this office for 25 years, 15 as the elected prosecutor. But I'm well aware of how, the kind of the increase in funding has gone over the years for the prosecutor's office. It's basically been as workload goes up, we look at that workload carefully, the number of cases that are coming in generated by law enforcement. And as those numbers go up, which they just do over time, but in small amounts, really, generally, that's how the prosecutor's office has been sort of funded up and staffed up. But now there's a big change. Again, that big change isn't going to hit the prosecutor's office, in a huge way next year, but it will start. And, you have to look at making sure that the prosecutor's office can keep up. So I requested one new DPA position in my critical needs request. And the reason I requested that one new DPA position was, again, based on looking at our actual workload in the prosecutor's office. Now, I'm not coming to you and saying, I need, 25 new prosecutors next year, because we'll need that next year. But we will need to have a plan. You will need to have a plan to increase the prosecutor's office to keep up over the years, because we can't have a system 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where we have 3 times as many defense attorneys as prosecutors and a whole new, a huge increase in law enforcement. If you let that happen, you would have a failure in the prosecutor's office, which would be then it's kind of like, well, why did we fund up law enforcement if you don't have a prosecutor's office that could keep up? You would be funding up law enforcement for nothing, frankly. if you don't have a prosecutor's office that can function well and keep up. The reason I asked for one additional DPA position out of the general fund in the critical needs request is because we lost a position. I talked to you about that in the work session that we had a little bit ago, and explained that we had a grant funded position that we were using to fund one of our prosecutors' positions. We lost that funding. That was the auto theft task force position, excuse me. We were able to not realize an actual loss in our staffing level because we we were able to get a project position, salary savings position for this year. That ends at the end of this year. So I'm going to have to lay off a prosecutor at the end of this year if you don't fund that position that I requested in my critical needs request. I don't make critical needs requests because they're not critical. I'm just saying keep the prosecutor's office up. Don't cause me to lay off a prosecutor as a result of this critical needs request. That's why I made the request. I'm not requesting a whole bunch of new prosecutors for 2026 because I don't think the caseload numbers are going to go up significantly in 2026. What I'm saying is keep us at this level for 2026. Let's see what starts to happen with respect to caseloads coming in. Let's see what happens with respect to, how many new cases law enforcement generates, and look at the filing numbers, and then, increase the prosecutor's office as needed. But let's don't start this new thing that we're starting, which is the beginning, and it's starting next year, the beginning of a bunch more defense attorneys and a bunch more police officers with an actual layoff in the prosecutor's office. That's why I made that request, and that's why I firmly believe that you should fund that position.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a big picture question for us too. I'm having a hard time figuring out priorities here. Everything seems like a crisis. I'm told that we don't have the money. We're in a structural deficit. We can't spend anything more. Everything I hear from everyone is we must fund it. Is there any entity that's assessing all of these and seeing where we can use the new sales tax? Is the Law and Justice Committee looking through, trying to figure out of these priorities, which one is the top priority that we absolutely must fund before early next year? Or are we just, I feel like we're winging it and we're going after the best pitch here, and everything seems so important.
Well, so my comments would be, when you say, does anyone have an answer? I'm sure other people have answers, but it's my turn to testify, so I'll give you my answers. So the law enforcement thing is going to happen, and the indigent defense thing is going to happen. Those things are going to happen. And yeah, the structural deficit every single year that I, come up and testify and, talk with the county manager and the great folks in the budget office, we always hear about the structural deficit. Every year I've been hearing about it since before I took office. So yeah, every year we hear about the structural deficit. And you hear pitches from, different departments about, the needs. And I get it that every department is saying they have needs. The drivers to the justice system are how many cases are coming into the prosecutor's office that are generated by law enforcement. Now you can go, another step further and, what's happening in our community to drive cases that law enforcement is responding to, but that's much more difficult and less direct of a question with respect to our criminal justice system and these funding things. But like I say, the increase in law enforcement is happening. Well, we have the data in the prosecutor's office for the case filing numbers and the number of trials. And that's what I'm looking at. And what I'm looking at is a number of case filings for criminal cases in Superior Court that's fairly flat, actually. Didn't go up this year over the year before, stayed flat, which is good. If those numbers were going down, you wouldn't see me asking for a position. The fact that they're staying flat is why I'm saying let's don't have a layoff in the prosecutor's office. The fact that they're staying flat is why I'm saying I don't need a whole bunch of additional prosecutors now. My deputy prosecutors are working hard. They're tapped out. They can't do any more cases. You heard Judge Vanderwood say the number of trials has gone up significantly. They're doing more trials for the number of cases, but they're able to do the work. But that question that you asked, Councilor Little, about kind of what's the metric to decide, where the funding should go? Well, how many cases are being generated by law enforcement? How many cases are we filing? That's the metric, because that tells us how many cases are going in the system. We don't decide as prosecutors which one should go, which one should be, what we do is we get cases, and if the evidence is there, then we file the case. That's our ethical duty as prosecutors, not to just kind of pick and choose. So when we get cases from law enforcement and the evidence is there that the crime was committed, then we file the case. So those case numbers give us the information about how many cases are coming in. It used to be that you could just kind of look at that to really say, well, do you need an increase in indigent defense and prosecutors or not? But now we have the Supreme Court saying, well, it doesn't really matter if you have the same number of cases, you need 3 times as many defense attorneys. Again, over 10 years. Well, if you're going to have 3 times as many defense attorneys, the same number of prosecutors are not going to be able to keep up with those cases. So who needs what in funding, that's the data point really that should be used, but you have these new things that are changing it. I hope that was helpful.
It is. Thank you. Any other thoughts here?
You're asking the council?
Yeah, that was my question to everyone. Any input is helpful.
Are there any questions of Tony from the council?
I feel like Will has one. No?
It's not so, thank you, Chair. It's not so much a thought as a comment, and I completely agree. The numbers speak for themselves, right? You're going to see an increase in police officer and deputy presence out in our streets of Clark County, and I guess in some cases, naturally, you're going to see an increase in the expectation is that, with an increase of police officers, with an increase of deputies on our streets, that there isn't an increase in arrest, that these folks instead are out there in community building relationships and building trust. But as the population grows, I get it. I understand. And so I hear what you're saying. I think that's really more of a comment than a question, but I see the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I hope, I think we all hope that when we increase law enforcement, that we don't see an increase in number of cases. I think we will. I don't think it's going to be a direct proportionate increase in number of cases, but we'll only find out as we move through this and we actually see how many cases are coming in. But what I can say is that, fortunately, our case numbers aren't going up a whole bunch. They've, kind of flattened off. They're not going down either. And I know we're going to have a whole bunch more defense attorneys. That's just going to happen. And prosecutors are going to have to be able to keep up. So what I'm saying is let's don't start this off with laying off a prosecutor. That would be the wrong foot to start off this kind of new path that we're going to head down.
I just have a clarifying question. The layoff that you talk about, would that be the end of 2025?
Mm-hmm.
It would be the end of
Yes.
2025.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah. Yeah. And again, just to be clear, we already lost the grant funding grant-funded position in our general felonies division, we were able to not have to lay a person off because we had salary savings and we got a project position this year. That project position ends at the end of this year, so I'll have to lay that person off. And I would also say it's not easy to hire DPAs and train them up. They're not easy to find, and we have a good one. So,
And was that considered a project position
well,
or it was just
I-
grant funded?
so we had a grant funded, I would call it a project position, lost that grant funding, but then separately this year we were able to use salary savings to get a 1 year, I would use the term project position, but with a 1 year ending because it was funded with salary savings just this year. So that ends at the end of this year.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to hear everyone else, but at the end, maybe we could hear from Emily and Kathleen, just which of these presentations and requests could potentially fit under the new sales tax monies next year or any other sources of funds. Thanks.
Good question. Okay.
Thank you, Council.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Tony. And I would just say you're welcome, even after you're out of office, to come back and communicate with us. We would be happy to hear from you if any of us are still around.
Would you really be happy to hear from me? Thank you, Council.
All right. Thanks very much. Okay, next up is the clerk. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Marshall, Council, and County Manager. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you regarding the clerk's request for the 2026 budget. We have kept our request to a minimum, understanding that the financial situation faced by the county. We have requested a budget neutral increase in spending for the on-base licenses. This expense is offset by revenue realized by the subscription fees collected by the licenses. We have also requested an increase in our service budget due to the increase in filing fees, which took place in July of 2025. Again, this is a budget neutral request, which we hope to use to increase our budget for temporary workers. We hope to use this temporary workers to perform mandated duties, which we do not have staffing capacity to complete. And again, this is budget neutral request. In addition, we have requested a critical needs as an FTE Court Assistant 3 to meet the staffing needs of the 12th judge, which was approved by the council in 2024 and was added to the bench January 2025. This position is critical as we are mandated to have a deputy clerk present in each hearing conducted by the Superior Court. In addition to the 12th judge added additional work for our staff, not only in court presence, but additional dockets, filings, and orders that need to be processed. Our current staffing shortage, we're continually having to pull from other resources of in-office leads, workers, even the elected county clerk has to go to court, and we are regularly needing to cover dockets and special hearings. It's impossible to cover break schedules and vacation, unscheduled sick leave with our current staffing level. Therefore, we're requesting again additional FTE to meet the mandated duties of the clerk. And for these reasons, we request council to approve the clerk's 2026 budget requests.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. If you could provide just a little bit more information, I think as you provided to me over the phone, about previous requests and which ones were fulfilled and which ones were not for the 11th and the 12th judge?
Yes, in 2019, the 11th judge was approved. And good. In 2019, the 11th judge was approved. The clerk had requested an in-court and an in-office person. Council did approve the in-court position, not the in-office position, to support that 11th judge. We then requested in 2024, the 12th judge was approved by council. We requested an in-court and an in-office staffing to meet those needed functions to accommodate the 12th judge. We were not provided either the in-court position or the in-office position. So we are consistently behind as far as being able to handle the additional workload of the additional dockets, the additional pleadings that are filed, the additional orders that come about between additional hearings added by an additional judicial officer. So we consistently work from behind, as you saw in the presentation, and I'll piggyback on the Superior Court's presentation. Even though criminal filings may not be up, we have protection order filings, we have additional domestic, we have anytime, also with the addition of law enforcement, additional contacts from law enforcement add to those civil protection orders, to those people filing domestic custody issues. So even though we may not see now additional criminal filings, the addition of population and law enforcement contacts add to the filings in the clerk's office. With each one of those CPO dockets, there is a requirement to get all of that information to law enforcement, whether it be here or in other states. There's just additional added with each legislative session. There are additional requirements for everything that we do. So we are working from behind since 2019 as far as in court and in the office.
Okay, so thank you. So just to be clear, there are 4 positions requested to cover both judges since 2019. In 2 in 2019 that were in office and in court, and 2 in 2024 for in office and in court. And you're only requesting 1 right now, and you were only granted the funding for 1. So you're still 2 behind if we funded
Yes,
1.
we are.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anything additional? Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the auditor.
See if I can get this mic to work this morning. Let's see.
Good luck.
Good luck. Oh, how's that? Is that working? Yay. Good morning, Council. For the record, Greg Kimsey, Clark County Auditor. We all understand that one of the most important roles of county government is provide a safe community for its citizens. I want to make sure I emphasize that and understand that, support that. However, in order to have sheriff's deputies out on the street doing their work, having prosecuting attorneys doing their work, judges doing their work, the clerk doing their work, you have all this stuff going on behind the scenes that also has to happen. You've got people that are assisting throughout the county, people hiring staff, disciplining staff, occasionally separating staff from employment here at the county. You have departments that are paying the bills to vendors. There's just a whole lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that's not nearly as newsworthy or exciting as a sheriff's deputy turning on those blue lights and running to someone's house when they call 911. So when I was here before you last time, we had, you saw representatives from 4 different departments talking about the budget requests that I put forward. The budget request I've put forward benefits the entire county. It is a county-wide request, in effect. Specifically, what I'm asking for are 3 new positions: grants coordinator position that is, we believe, will be fully funded in the first year through a variety of mechanisms that I've bored each of you with previously. Payroll supervisor position, human resource position. Those are the 3 positions that I'm requesting. Each of those positions, half of the cost of those positions will be recovered through other funds. And then in addition, I am asking for your support to purchase a piece of software, the strategic sourcing software module for Workday that provides procurement services. So when departments want to issue RFPs, it'll be much more automated. I think I'm told we're a 6 or 9 month backlog. If a department wants to issue an RFP, it takes like 9 months before that RFP can even be issued. I'm getting a nod of agreement there, so thank you. Contract management, and then our vendor portal for our vendors to streamline their ability to sign up to be vendors to the county and to get paid by the county. The legislature last year put into effect a new fee when you go to update your registration on your motor vehicle or motorcycle or trailer or car. That new fee is effective January 1 this coming year, will generate $1 million a year of new money to the general fund. The net cost of the requests that I've made is $290,000. So the gross cost, $290,000 of one-time money for the software, and then the ongoing over time net cost of those 3 positions and the software is about $180,000 per year. So $1 million of new money coming through the auto licensing department, I'm asking to spend over time, once we do the one-time upfront cost, $180,000 a year. Now, in addition, you've recently approved the creation of a new fund, the Law and Justice Sales Tax Fund, that will also provide to the general fund cost recovery in the first year, $240,000 of cost recovery to the general fund. That's not currently budgeted. It's not in the county manager's fund. It's something you'll be discussing here soon. In the following year, over $400,000 of cost recovery to the general fund. I'm asking that you amend the county manager's 2026 budget to adopt these 4 items, those 3 new positions and the strategic sourcing software. And I'm happy to, I do want to make another point. Over the past 15 years, the Human Resources Office and the Auditor's Financial Services Office has actually had a reduction in the number of FTEs. We have fewer people working in those 2 offices now than we had 15 years ago. How are we able to do that? Well, technology. The strategic sourcing software is the county's best hope of continuing to minimize growth of the FTE in those internal service departments. So happy to respond to any questions. But I do ask again that you amend the county manager's budget to add those 4 items.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to learn a little bit more about the grants position. What departments currently have the capacity in-house to do grants? Which departments would benefit from this additional position? And then what your arguments are for having a full-time position versus a project position over 2 years?
So I have to say I'm not the world's expert on grants. My understanding, maybe someone will correct me here. There are a couple departments that do have grant specialists. I think the Department of Community Services, I think the Health Department, they have people who are very skilled and knowledgeable about grants. Other than that, it's kind of a make it up as you go along. I know, well, you heard Treasurer Topper this morning talking about a grant that she had applied for. I know in the elections office, we have people who fill out the grant applications. So it's distributed across the county. There's been, I think, general agreement by people that someone who's focused on this grants, on the grant opportunities, will bring in new grants that will help to pay for that position. But even with setting that aside, we have the ability to charge departments for the state auditor's office cost of auditing grants. And between the indirect cost plan, which would provide 50% recovery of the cost of that grants position, and then charging out the specific costs of the state auditor's office bill, those two things alone will pay the cost of that grants coordinator. That grants coordinator position I'm confident will not be any burden at all in the general fund. And I do believe that we'll bring in additional, as a result of the efforts, additional services will be provided to the community through the new grants that are obtained.
Thank you. And the question about project position versus FTE?
I'm not a fan of project positions. I think just fundamentally, you're not going to, as was commented before, if it is a permanent need, you ought to hire a permanent person for it. I do believe you aren't going to attract the most qualified candidates for a project position relative to a permanent position.
Okay, thanks. I've been a primary grant writer for my two nonprofits that I ran as executive director. I know how important that role is and how key it is to have the right messaging and to be successful in obtaining those grants. So I would assume that that position would pay for itself. Thank you.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Craig. Now, I just want to be very careful on how I say this. I'm 100% supportive of the grant coordinator. As someone who works in a nonprofit, and we exist only by grants, we're constantly chasing the very few grants that are out there. And so I get that there is a lot of work that needs to be done to be able to secure some funding. Now, I don't want to say that I'm not supporting the other two positions, but at the very least, I do support
I think
the grant writing coordinator position.
And Chair and Councilor Fuentes, your comment, I think, reinforces the idea that when you have people throughout the county whose primary job is not to figure out how to be successful in grant applications, that we're not being as successful as we could be.
Sounds like there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Other questions? I think maybe I have a question for the county manager or Emily related to that additional revenue that has come in. Has that goes into the general fund? Has it already been budgeted in your budget? It's not like we've got an extra $1 million hanging
It's
around.
included in the recommended budget, the $1 million that. Greg
So it's already
It's- yeah.
allocated.
It's allocated in the 6-year forecast. I would say it's recognized, the revenue is recognized.
Am I correct, though, that the $240,000 that's projected to be recovered in costs through the new Law and Justice Fund is not in your budget? Well, every fund has charged indirect cost, right? And when you have $7 million into the Law and Justice Fund in 2026, the indirect cost plan will result in a $240,000 charge to that fund that will then be will be received by the general fund. That $240,000, I'm quite confident, is not in the 2026 county manager's
You're
recommended
correct about
budget.
that. We haven't allocated that
So
in the
I
budget.
am correct about that. Yeah.
You're correct that it's
Yeah.
not budgeted. We haven't looked at the numbers or anything yet.
So my estimate is 240,000.
Okay, we're going to go with that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I think any of us who have worked for nonprofits understand the importance of a grant writer in the long run. And I do think, just because it's come up quite a bit about the project positions and I understand there's 60 positions that are in that category, and there may not some may legitimately be project positions. Some are assumed to be permanent positions, but have this title for budgeting purposes. But it deserves a close look at.
And those of you who have worked in nonprofits, I also believe, understand the importance of having human resources professionals available to you, as well as the ability to pay your vendors and to sign up vendors.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, let's see. The assessor's office. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, sounds like it's working. Morning, counselors. Thank you for allowing me to the time to speak today. My name is Peter Van Nortwick, and I serve as your county assessor. I want to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to the county manager for extending our project personal property appraiser position. This extension has been valuable. That said, I respectfully request that this project position be converted into a permanent full-time role as requested by my office in ASO 0426 AD. Over time, because of the structural deficit, the county has increasingly relied on project positions, even for work that is not project-based, but rather core mandated functions of my office. I believe this policy is short-sighted and problematic, and I urge the council to reconsider. Here are the key reasons. First, mischaracterization of work. It is misleading to label the appraiser position as project, when in reality the work is ongoing and essential. This is not a one-time initiative. It is core work required by law. These roles deserve to be permanent, not temporary or project. Recruitment difficulties. Project positions are harder to fill. We see lower candidate interest, especially among internal staff who are understandably reluctant to leave a stable role for a job that may not last. Third, this blocks internal mobility. When a role is temporary, employees in lower grade permanent positions are less likely to apply. There's too much risk. They may leave security for uncertainty. That blocks real career advancement and undermines morale. 4, illusionary cost savings. While project roles may seem like budget saving measures in the short term, they mask the real long-term cost. Labeling ongoing work as project understates what it truly costs to fulfill our mandated functions year after year. Risk to mandated functions. Because the appraiser role supports mandated work, if funding dries up or cuts are made, losing that position could cripple our ability to deliver. If it were permanent, we could make cuts elsewhere or reorganize, but losing core capacity would be much more damaging. Why it matters to the county and our constituents. First point, making this position permanent ensures continuality and builds institutional knowledge in my office. 2, it stabilizes our workforce, lowers turnover, and supports morale. 3, it makes long-term budgeting more transparent. The public and the council deserve to see the real cost of running my office. As an independent elected official, having permanent staff gives me the flexibility to manage and prioritize responsibly, and to absorb cuts if necessary without dismantling core functions. In closing, I urge you to convert the project personal property appraiser into a permanent full-time position. This isn't about one job. It is about integrity in how we structure our workforce, accountability in our budgeting, and stability in delivering essential services. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Councilor Young.
Chair, this is more a question for staff, actually. What I would like to see, if it would be possible, is I know we've talked about these project positions multiple times. What I would be curious is how many of them truly are with the intent of being a project, and that it is fully intended that that service would go away, that position would go away. And then I look at some of the ones where, I mean, they may have started out as like, thinking about the assessor situation and prosecuting attorneys as well, where there was additional work and, we used ARPA or whatever temporary funds to create those project positions with the intent that this is one-time money that we're using, but they are essentially a little bit more core positions. They're not something that is meant for a project that is happening and is going to be done, and there's no need for that position anymore. And what I would be curious about is what that number looks like, and if we were to switch them to permanent positions, how it would change the 5-year outlook. Because I know we're budgeting them as one-time expenses for either 1 or 2 years, and then the following 3 years you don't see that. But I would just be curious about that, because I think there's merit to both ways. I mean, I fully believe and understand in the way that we're looking at these positions currently, in the sense that we can afford them in the long run, at least with the outlook that we currently have. But I also do agree with some of the sentiment that's coming forward. And so I think that we ought to be able to have a closer look at some of those project positions and what the long-term financial impacts would be to the county if we were to consider making them permanent. And then with the understanding that the reason they're project is because we can't afford them right now. And then the reality would be set that if we did choose to make those permanent, that we could be looking at layoffs in that department relative to those added positions in the following years. I mean, if we did make that decision, it would be very clear to each department, this is temporary. So you probably going to figure something out unless we are able to come up with some more revenue or ways to continuously fund those positions. Anyway, those are a couple thoughts. I don't know if that's something that could be done. I don't know how much work that is.
We can do what we can. I mean, obviously we have our hearing tomorrow morning. I will say, I believe most of them are like Peter's project position. But, we might have some IT projects or facility projects that are specific, but the rest of them are, I believe, and we'll confirm that, are regular positions. And I'll note, and we can look at the forecast as well, that we did look at all the requests this year, even if we were to do project for all the FTE requests, and we don't have enough money this year to cover those. We might have some money, one-time funding and stuff, but the number exceeds the available funding for this year or for 2026.
So Glenn, if I could just address your comment. For example, this project position, it sits in my personal property group. If I were to lose this position, I lose 33% of my workforce in that area. That's devastating. If it was a permanent position and they said, okay, you need to cut a position, that allows me the ability to go and say, hey, maybe in my assessment services team or my residential appraisers, maybe we could reduce positions, we could consolidate positions, maybe in management, we could consolidate, reorganize. It gives us that flexibility. So when you have a project position sitting in an area and it is, like I said, 33% of the FTEs in that area, losing that project position could be devastating to that area, especially when they've made such great advances in having that excess person and really catching up and doing the mandated work we should have been doing all along.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, some of the sentiment here is it's different when you hire somebody only to lay them off. It's different when we've had them on as a project position for several years. And, we made that position permanent, and then perhaps that goes away, or it gives the department the flexibility of determining how that cut would look like. But I think it's a little bit different. I absolutely agree with the sentiment that you don't want to hire somebody permanently, not knowing you're going to be able to fund it, and then cut it. I don't agree with that, and that's why I wouldn't support, anything like that. But I don't know if it's one of those things. It's about perception, a lot of it, and how you see and visualize things. But it's a good discussion. I appreciate the comments that have come forth from all the departments on it. It's something we ought to consider and look at.
Go ahead.
Chair. I think it's fair to say that no position, regardless of how it's categorized, is permanent, right? If we have a structural deficit and we need to lay people off, it doesn't matter what they're labeled, what they're categorized, right? We're going to have to lay people off. That's just part of the process. Now, I support creating some of these positions, these project positions into permanent positions for a number of reasons that you outline in bullet point form, including the challenges of being able to hire folks, right? Or being able to retain them, the morale that it has on your overall organization. And so my question to County Manager Kathleen is, you mentioned before, as we've had these discussions, that these project management positions are essentially get the same benefits as a permanent position. So if they get the same benefits as a permanent position, what is the cost difference between a project position and a permanent position?
It's the sustainability of our financial situation. Project positions are for 2 years, so then you could look out 6 years versus a 6 years for the full FTE.
Okay, so it's not necessarily you're comparing what it's going to look like in the future if we choose to continue these positions or not necessarily the cost of keeping a person or an employee year to year with their benefits.
They're budgeted for 2 years if it's a 2-year project position. So yes. And I can't speak to the turnover. I believe Superior Court even said that they've had the same employee. That's why we try to do 2 years out so that they're not looking for a job this summer, knowing that their job ends at the end of the year. So they at least have that security for 2 years.
Okay, I understand. And thank you for providing that explanation. I guess what I'm hearing is that the only thing that's preventing from transitioning these roles from project to permanent is the what the budget looks like 2 years out. So it's not necessarily what it costs to keep the person in place year after year.
And I would say it's not just 2 years out, it's next year, it's this year. We can't, the number of FTEs that were requested this year, we don't have the funds to cover it in 2026.
So if I may add, just to clarify, it's essentially like we have a savings account and we're paying for these project positions from our savings account. That's not long. You can't do that long term because eventually your savings account burns out, you know, and so if we make a permanent position, we are essentially saying we're going to continue year after year drawing down that savings account, which is our, you know, our funds balance right now. And that I agree with the county manager, long term, that's not sustainable. So, you know, if we do approve these, we know that they are either they're short term and they're going to be layoffs coming forward, or there has to be new revenue that comes in to continue to pay for those salaries.
Right, I understand. But I think it sounds like with the structural deficit, no position is permanent in this county.
So I agree with you, Councilor Fuentes. And like I said, that's why it masks the true cost of in the structural deficit of what it costs to run our offices. If this project position goes away, that group's devastated. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to catch up doing the work. And so you're not seeing it in the long-term budget, but that need isn't going away in the next few years. It's still going to be there in 5 years. That's what I say, is it doesn't show the council and it doesn't show the public the true cost of what it costs to run our offices this year, next year, and 5-10 years down the road.
Thank you.
It sounds as if the assumption is if cuts are needed, that these project positions will be the first to go. Is that actually the case, or would you still be able to look for cuts in other areas if we got down to that?
I would say that's up to the elected official, how they decide to reduce their budget per council's direction.
Okay, so there'd still be that ability to retain the core functions. Peter, I really appreciate you very succinctly brought up all of these issues. This requires, I think, a longer discussion. I think that your position, and there may be other positions, are in that core critical function and really, you know, should be permanent positions.
So if I can just respond to
yes, please.
What was just said, that means that it's council that actually decides whether or not this project position keeps going. And that means I have to keep coming back to council to make that argument year after year after year, taking away my ability to say, hey, look, there's other ways I can reconfigure, and allowing us to actually run our offices as we see fit. It causes us to have to come back to council and say, yep, we need this project position again this year. Yep, we need it again this year. Yeah, we need it again this year. Oh, yep, we're gonna have to cut here, but I still need this project position.
Well, there's a strong argument right there.
Yep.
All right.
And I just wanted to note too, in the recommendations that you'll hear tomorrow, and I know I shared this with council, there is amendments to the recommendations to include extending those project positions. That's going to cost about just under $1 million for next year and $800,000 for the following year. So it just wanted to.
So all of the current project positions,
the current ones that were being requested to make permanent, yes,
they're continued for 2 years as project positions.
If council approves the amendment, yes.
Okay. So there's at least that. All right. So a lot of good questions were asked, and I don't know. I think fingers crossed we're adopting the budget tomorrow. I don't know. I think there'll still be ongoing questions about how we operate these project positions going forward. And then there's some that could be covered continuing as project positions, but it sounds like there's a desire of the council to really understand this more thoroughly and maybe make some changes.
Is there any other specific information you need on this before tomorrow's hearing?
Well, I guess the assumption is the people who have come forward and requested positions to become permanent, it is seen as a critical need. There could be others that are critical needs, but they've probably maybe given up in requesting. I think there's a fairness issue here, really, probably throughout the budget. I think it deserves an examination of all of them. I don't think that we have time to do that between now and tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I would like to see that in the new year to really examine that.
Yeah, and I also want to just share, you're hearing from electeds today. We also have project positions in our departments, and I, don't want to lose sight of those.
Absolutely. I
discussions.
think those are among the 60. Okay. Thanks for
All right.
stimulating that discussion.
Right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I believe that brings us to the end of the electeds. Are there any comments from the county manager or budget director at this time? We'll be hearing a lot of this again tomorrow.
Sure.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
did want to follow up though on Counselor Little's request to see what what positions that were being requested could potentially be funded with the new law and justice sales tax.
That's a very good question. I think that's made it confusing because we're making decisions now on the budget and knowing that there'll be some additional revenue that we'll be budgeting in the new year for some of these positions that have been requested now.
Yeah.
Awkward.
Yeah, so the expense part has not been committed other than the informal commitment for the sheriff's office, but that's not part of this annual budget because we're not going to see it till the end of next year, and we can do that during a supplemental. I will just say Law and Justice has done a lot of work at looking at the system holistically last year, and they continue to do that work. So every stakeholder's been at the table saying, okay, what does this mean for impacts for us? And it was mostly focused on additional sheriff deputies and Vancouver police officers. I also don't want to lose that. That's why you have to look at this holistically because we also have a jail and that jail needs staffing as well. So I don't want to lose that focus. Public defense, as you heard, has a lot of needs, but yes, there has been a lot of work done and there is a lot more work to be done to look at that. So we're not committing 100% here and then we're missing something over here because that system has to work holistically. So,
Thank
but
you.
there's no expense approvals through the 2026 budget process for tomorrow. That will happen next year.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, I think directly, all the law and justice positions could be considered as part of this new revenue source. I think that's what the council committed to last week, I think it was. The ones that fall outside law and justice might need different consideration.
But thank you for that. But all of the requests are more than the revenue that we could be generating. Go ahead.
Thank you for that clarification. And just to confirm, you said the money from that would not be realized with positions until the end of next year. If
when the sheriff is done, and I think we're looking at it either this week or next week on the grant program. If we have everything submitted and approved by the January 17th date, the tax will start the first day of the second quarter, and then we'll see that a couple months later. So we're not going to receive, that's the earliest we'll receive any funding for the criminal justice sales tax.
And when would be the earliest that we could allocate portions of it? The end of the year?
I would say middle to end of the year. Yes. Because we're not going to receive that funding. Like I said, it's January, February,
And
March, April,
is there any
May, June.
estimation of how many of these requests we could potentially fund, or how much money will be there? Just
Yeah, we
round
shared
ball.
the 6-year forecast.
Yeah.
Um,
If you could just
2 weeks
ballpark
ago.
it.
It's around 8 million for next year. And again, just remember, it's not going to be 8 million on day one. We're going to collect that over the course of the rest of the year. So the recommendation, I think, in general would be, let's get the revenue started collecting in June or July, and then try to commit to some expenses in the fall supplemental and start that process from there, because that's when the funding will be available to
Thank you.
spend.
This is super helpful to help decide what to do tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments today? I would just want to really thank you all for your dedication and service. This is very, very difficult. I think made it even more difficult, really zeroing in on the critical needs that you all submitted. So thank you, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Okay, and is there a county manager report? I see that's on my agenda. Okay, thank you. And without objection, this meeting is adjourned.